Welcome to the program today. Mano Gonzalez here in studio, and we have a great few programs that we're here recording with Chris Pinto. But before we get into some of that, I want to remind everybody that we are going to Israel, and we are going to be going to Israel in March of 2023. So we want to make sure that everybody knows and is invited. If you have never been, it's a great time to do it. The spring is my favorite time of the year to be there. I've been there 7 times and led many groups and trips, and it's awesome. And if you want more information on that, you can go to visitisraeltoday.com, and it is filling up, which is great. And so we're kind of closing the window a little bit on the trip. But we also have a conference in March of 2023 where we are going to be in Orlando, Florida at the Orlando Prophecy Summit. And if you want to know more information about that and to sign up, you can go to our website, prophecywatchers.com, and get all the information there. We got over 15 speakers that are going to be joining us. Probably a great time as well to be in Orlando in March. Not too hot, not too cold, so we certainly invite you to be there. Today we're going to be talking about what I find is extremely fascinating topics. And we're going to be talking about the secret mysteries of America's beginnings with Chris Pinto. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you, Mondo. It's great to be here.
You know, your series, this is a 3-volume series. We're going to talk about the first one, which I think, as at least from my Christian experience, I wasn't raised a Christian, but coming into Christianity and people are going, America's a Christian nation. America's been that way from the beginning. And yet some of this stuff that comes to play kind of gives a little bit of a different perspective, more of a fuller perspective. But before we go into that, I like to learn about people and our audience too. Share with our audience a little bit about how, who you are, how you came, how God called you, because it's a great story, how God called you to even explore some of this stuff.
Well, I was pursuing acting, writing, directing, independent filmmaking, that kind of thing when I was in my 20s, which brought me to New York City. And I was pursuing it from a very worldly, Hollywood kind of perspective. That was my dream initially. Then I became a born-again believer while I was in New York, thank the Lord, and turned away from the Hollywood path because I realized how corrupt and worldly it was. And so I was trying to figure out what it was that the Lord wanted me to do with my talents, whatever they were. So I ended up moving out to California, and while I was there, I was still a young believer, and I started attending a church. And it seemed very traditional, very family-oriented church. I got very involved in the congregation. Well, then one Sunday, we're singing in a church group. Everybody's joining a big circle, and we're singing a traditional hymn. And I'm standing next to an older gentleman who was one of the deacons there. And we're all singing and swinging our hands this way. And at the same time, I had been learning from friends of mine about things like Freemasonry and the New Age movement. And I wasn't really interested in that. I have to be honest, I really was not interested. But then I'm at this church gathering, and I'm standing next to this older gentleman, and we're sitting here swinging our hands back and forth singing, and I suddenly look over, and he had on his hand a big ring with a square and a compass and the letter G
typical,
in the center.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Imagery.
And it was like, a scene from a horror movie to me. I was shocked that this was happening there at the church that I was going to. So I handled the issue very discreetly. What I chose to do was to write a short letter and handle it very discreetly. Wrote to him at his home address,
okay.
That I got out of the church directory. So I'm not making a big deal out of it. Well, to make a long story short, that exploded in the congregation. And I discovered there were all these Freemasons that were there at this church. And they were very offended that I had written this letter and that I was speaking out against Freemasonry. And I'm getting phone calls from the pastor.
Wow.
And all these other things. And it turned into a big controversy there in the church. And at that point, I realized I could not continue at the church. I had to leave. And I was actually there with my wife. She was my fiance at the time. And I said, honey, we're going to have to get out of here. We can't go here anymore. But that was my own personal experience that led to so much of the research that I ended up doing into Freemasonry and these other groups and what they actually believe. Because I discovered that it was their beliefs that were being put into this church and were really replacing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the gospel was deemed offensive The idea that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no man comes unto the Father but by him. And that was where I realized these ideas about Masonry and these other belief systems and so on, it's not just a conspiracy theory, it has a very real application in what's going on in the churches even today.
Mm-hmm. You know, I imagine that many of you might resonate with Chris's story because, there's so many today, the Church of Jesus Christ is very diverse, and you have those that are church in name only. The Bible is nothing but a storybook, or not even really anything to look at as authoritatively. But we also, what I want to get into as well is the whole idea of, you talk about in here, the secret mysteries of America's beginnings, Volume 1, The New Atlantis. And so you have this trilogy of talking about, again, the nature of secret societies. And some people, I hope you don't just dismiss this as conspiracy, because these are societies that are well known, and they've been around a long time, and they have an agenda, and they have beliefs, and many of them are, as you mentioned, very ecumenical. But in another way, they're very historical. I mean, I did a lot of stuff in Egypt, and you see these themes that go on. It's humanism in a very real way. But let's start out right in the beginning here, because those people who participate in the Elks Lodge and the Freemasons and the other groups, I'm walking down the street, or maybe somebody maybe a relative is a Freemason, they're part of the lodge. Are they Satan incarnate?
No, that's the thing. Many of them, depending on how far into it they are. And I mean, I've actually met Freemasons and I've had them call me for years.
I bet.
Because of our series and so on. And some of them have argued that they themselves are part of a lodge somewhere that is totally dedicated to Christianity, that they're not into all the other religions being one and the same. They claim that they reject that, but that at their lodge, they're just dedicated to the gospel of Jesus Christ. They believe Jesus is the only way to heaven, etc. I have been told that by some Freemasons. But that's not the official view of Masonry itself.
Yeah, historically. I mean, I think that's the important thing, is you have, even you could do this in a denominational sense, where you have maybe the official denominational statement of faith, pick one, Presbyterian or something, and yet they might endorse, non-biblical or, non-inspired teachings in that sense. But the church over here is like, hey, I know our mother denomination rejects the authority of Scripture, rejects traditional marriage, rejects Jesus is the only way, but here as the pastor, we're teaching this. So there's no doubt there's a possibility, but I think the key, one example is people, I grew up Catholic too, so people a lot of times will ask me about are Catholics going to heaven, and that's not even part of this, but I always say, well, the real question is, it doesn't really matter about, Aunt Susie who goes to Catholic Church. What does the Catholic Church teach in its official doctrine?
Right.
So in the same way, when you think about Freemasonry, you have the official doctrine that goes back. Let's, because you bring it up, Freemasonry is kind of a boogeyman term. So give a little bit of a history as it relates to, not exhaustive necessarily, but Freemasonry. Where does it originate from? What are some of its main tenets?
You have two forms of Masonry. The original craft Masonry, which is your stone cutters.
Okay.
The guys
literal Masons
who cut stones perfectly, and really they are master craftsmen. There's no way around it. They built the cathedrals of Europe. They built these ancient structures that I know you're very familiar with your archaeology. I mean, just brilliant work in terms of building. So the craft of Masonry originally just involved cutting stones and laying them in these perfect perfect alignment, so they're not even using mortar, and you can't even get a sheet of paper in between the cracks in the stones supposedly. This is what they're known for. Well, the secrets for how they did all of that used to be the secrecy of Masonry. That they were trade secrets, like a company that has a recipe, like Coca-Cola or something. They have their trade secret. Then you have the birth of what is called speculative Masonry. Speculative Masonry is applying esoteric or inner philosophic meanings to all of these different dimensions, the square, the compass, the responsibility to take a rough piece of stone and to make it into a smooth surface and this kind of thing. All of that began to take on philosophic meaning, and that became the inner meaning of Masonry. And then somewhere along the way, it is believed that the Knights Templar, who were part of all of this, when they were in the Middle East, encountered, typically, it is said, the Yazidis. If you've ever studied the Yazidis, they are an ancient group that literally worships Lucifer, or the equivalent of Lucifer, because they claim that they worship a fallen angel who is the enemy of God. And that's what their religion is based on. They actually, to this day, it's kind of a sad situation. Modern Yazidis are often persecuted in the Middle East because of their beliefs. And so it's generally thought that the Knights Templar, when they were in Jerusalem in the Middle East, that they interacted with these Yazidis and began to adopt these Luciferian, pagan, occult views that became kind of an inner secret among the Knights Templar.
Okay, let's hold right there for a minute, because we're going to take a little break so you can see how to get our magazine. But this is a great segue, because I want to get to the bottom of this after the break.
Every day, the ancient prophecies of the Bible get more and more exciting as we watch world events come into perfect alignment with the words of the ancient prophets. Examine the pre-trib rapture doctrine taught by the Apostle Paul. Come to a deeper understanding of the giants of Genesis 6 and the real reason for the flood of Noah. Read the shocking things we see coming out of the world of science and technology, mind-blowing advances in transhumanism and artificial intelligence. Keep a close eye for a series of wars coming very soon to the Middle East. The Bible's a supernatural book, and we enjoy covering the fringe subjects and dark corners of Scripture as well. UFOs, the Nephilim, the miracles of the Bible, and so much more. It's a one-of-a-kind publication full of articles that will make you a Bible prophecy expert and prepare you for the future. We have a very special subscription offer for you today. For your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you can subscribe to either the digital version or the print version of our magazine. And here's the best part. In addition to receiving 12 monthly issues of the magazine, this offer comes with a fantastic bonus: 8 DVDs from some of the leading prophecy experts in the world today. 8 DVDs plus 12 issues of the magazine represents a $200 value, but it's available today for your gift of just $50 or more to support the work of Prophecy Watchers. This offer is available anywhere in the USA and will ship both the magazine and the DVDs absolutely free. Don't wait or hesitate. Call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv to take advantage of this limited time offer. Looking at the future through the lens of Bible prophecy is the entire focus of this ministry. We're motivated like never before by our desire to tell the world that Jesus is the only answer for these troubling times. And we do believe that He's coming back very soon, just as He promised. Partner with us today. Help us take God's message of salvation through Jesus Christ to the whole world.
Well, I really hope you get our magazine. We have a lot of great authors and speakers that write in the magazine every month. It'll keep you updated and certainly informed about as we watch the end of the age unfold. Well, before the break, we're talking about the role of the Freemasonry and really the historical nature, and you were talking about the Knights Templar. And let's bring that fast forward to how it comes to influencing, again, the secret beginnings of America. Let's talk about that.
Well, the history, and there's so much history that you can talk about, but we focus in part one, we focus on the influence of a man named Sir Francis Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
And Lord Bacon, as he's known, is a very, very influential figure. They still to this day have a monument to him outside Gray's Inn in London, which is where they train the lawyers there in England. And Lord Bacon is a very, very influential figure. He's considered the father of the modern scientific method, where it was Lord Bacon who had told an allegory that he's famous for about two professors who were arguing and debating over how many teeth a horse has. And one said, well, I think a horse has this many. The other one said, no, I think it's that many. And finally somebody came in and said, well, why don't we go down to the barn and open the horse's mouth and count the teeth? And then the other two said, no, that's nonsense. We can't do that, right? So they waved it off. And Bacon said that this was the silly manner that science was being conducted in his day. And he wanted to change that. So he said, true science is, if you want to know how many teeth a horse has, you go down to the barn, open the horse's mouth, and count the teeth.
Do a little investigation empirically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Science is knowledge obtained through observation. So that was the formula. And then, of course, he argued knowledge is power. That was the other part. And what's very interesting about Bacon is considered the first grand master of modern Freemasonry, and also became the chief of the Rosicrucians. He was a disciple originally of a man named Dr. John Dee, and we talk about this in the film. John Dee is a very interesting character. He has been the inspiration for many figures in literature that people know. Gandalf, the old wizard in Lord of the Rings, Albus Dumbledore in the Harry Potter books, and even James Bond in the James Bond 007 series.
That was really interesting when I saw that in there. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
And even though he looked nothing like James Bond, you know, he looked more like like a traditional Gandalf type wizard. You know, he had a beard and so on. He was a mathematician, and he was into all of these mysteries and whatnot. But he was also a spy for Queen Elizabeth. And when he corresponded with the Queen, when he would write letters to her, he would sign, his signature was an O, and then a long 7. And so that's where the whole idea of 007 came from. He was the original Agent 007. But then Ian Fleming developed it into a completely different format. But he's actually a very, very influential figure. And he was the one who had supposedly revived Rosicrucianism and then taught these ideas to Sir Francis Bacon. And your Baconian societies, those who study...
What's Baconian? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, a Baconian society is a society that studies Francis Bacon.
So Bacon, Baconian, I got
you.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And now I have to admit, they tend to get very carried away. I think they actually give more credit to Bacon sometimes than they should.
Okay.
But nevertheless, they do believe he was very, very influential, and he was, there's no question. So Bacon eventually becomes the chief of the Rosicrucians. There's this painting of this old man handing a lantern to a younger man, and that is said to be Dr. John Dee handing off the reins of power to Lord Bacon, where Rosicrucianism is concerned.
You know, this is really important because the United States, or America as we know it, was not created in a vacuum. It was created out of a historical situation. And really, if we think about the waves of, emigration out of Europe, I think about from history class, Jamestown was founded in 1607. Bacon died in roughly 1620s. So you have the Puritans fleeing, the really church-related persecution. The Mayflower, 1620. So you have these groups of people that are coming across to America, but some of them are certainly solidly Christian. We're going to discuss that in a different program, but you also have other people with an agenda. And so you talk about the New Atlantis as a subtitle. So talk a little bit about Bacon and his influence, and what do you mean by New Atlantis? Well, why would America be considered Atlantis?
Well, Francis Bacon wrote a book called The New Atlantis. In it, he asserts that America, literally geographically, that this country is the site of ancient Atlantis. So they believed Atlantis was real. The only record of Atlantis is from the writings of Plato in the Critias. And he talks about Atlantis, and he talks about how Atlantis was a civilization that stretched throughout the ancient world. that there was the city of Atlantis, but then it stretched presumably throughout all of the old civilized world. And Plato talks about it. He talks about the great flood, the great deluge of all, where all things were destroyed in a flood, and that was the destruction of ancient Atlantis, supposedly. Well, most Christians believe that what he's really doing is giving a variation of the flood story, the flood in the time of Noah, and that this is kind of a paganized version of the flood story. But it was the antediluvian world that had supposedly provoked the wrath of the gods, and therefore the gods drowned the old world in a flood. And that was Atlantis of old. But it was this great society that had achieved great things. And so Bacon believed, and people like John Dee and others, these mystics, they believed that America, when America was discovered, the New World, that what they had really found was lost Atlantis. And so Bacon, in his book, The New Atlantis, is writing about what he envisions this new society is going to be. And it's going to be driven by scientific achievement and advancement. So he's writing about things like weapons of war, cannons that are able, to reach much farther than any cannon anybody had ever seen before. He's writing about flying machines. He's writing about sound devices that can project sound, at great distances. And he's also writing about things like experimenting on animals for treatments, medical treatments that would then be applied to human beings. So a lot of these things that Bacon is envisioning in his book, The New Atlantis, would come to pass once America was developed.
We're going to take a little break here so you can see how to get Chris's trilogy, and as well as a couple other videos that he's done, which are tremendous. And you think, why are we talking about this? Well, these things are these philosophies, these ideas, which were implanted early in America's history, are coming to find their fruition, because there is an end time significance to many of these things. And I want to talk about that when we come back, but you'll take a listen.
There's no doubt that much of America's national heritage was Christian, but just as a coin has two sides, our national heritage has another side, one based on secret societies and their occult values. If America was founded as a Christian nation, why are so many of our symbols, buildings, and monuments based on pagan traditions? Chris Pinto has produced 3 lengthy films that pull back the curtain on events kept hidden for over 400 years. America's Secret Beginnings is available from our ministry for your gift of $30 or more, with shipping included anywhere in the USA. But don't miss his next 2 companion films, Riddles in Stone, a film that explores the occult architecture of Washington, D.C., and Eye of the Phoenix, another shocking film that reveals the secrets hidden within our own dollar bill. When you purchase all 3 films in the New Atlantis package for your gift of $85 or more, we'll send you a bonus that will open your eyes to the future plans of these globalists. Global Reset, a book by pastors Mark Hitchcock and Jeff Kinley. These 2 prophecy experts examine the system of the Antichrist, a plan to bring the whole world under the submission of one man to establish their own occult-based New World Order. You can access these critical resources by calling the toll-free number you see on your screen or by visiting our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Be sure to ask for the New Atlantis package. The world is changing very quickly. If we're living in the times the Bible calls the last days, we should expect to see these things happening, which is why we call ourselves the Prophecy Watchers. Help us continue to share the good news of the gospel and God's free gift of salvation, available only through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. In these perilous times, He is our only hope for the future.
Well, welcome back. And these videos are tremendous in giving you a very thorough history. Each one of them is a couple hours long. I mean, it's amazing. You're on location. What I hear you saying, and from seeing the documentary myself, that Bacon was an exhaustive visionary. I mean, he, again, the science, the art, the literature, he was looking at a society of, the way I understand it, is Atlantis reborn. Now we have an opportunity to accomplish this new civilization with an endpoint of what?
Well, here's how I would say it to a modern audience. The new Atlantis back then, today is called the New World Order, called the Great Reset. All of these ideas for a new global system. And again, it's why artificial intelligence, the advancement of science, etc., and these Rosicrucian ideas, the symbol for Rosicrucianism is a cross with a rose. The cross symbolizes Christianity. The rose symbolizes the ancient mystery belief system.
This marriage of paganism with Christian thought. And
the rose is also a symbol for secrecy. So you have the term sub rosa, so it's like the secret Christianity. And that's really a picture of how they came into this country.
They're not looking to exalt Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior alone, right?
No. Now there were sincere Christians. We make the point in the series that I believe, and we believe generally, that most of the early settlers were these sincere believers who wanted to teach the Bible and the gospel of Jesus Christ. But there were, as Dr. Stan Monteith says, he says there were always those people on the other side. And they were these secret groups. And what they did is they developed a language where outwardly they could talk to you and they sound like they're Christian. Yeah. But inwardly they have a very different meaning for what they mean by words like God and Christianity and salvation and stuff like that. They have a whole different belief system, but it's hidden. It's secret. It's known only to them in their secret groups.
You know, that's the nature of just the whole idea of going back, and you talk about this in the film, but to Gnosticism, this idea of having the secret knowledge to be initiated into some of the, again, a higher level of plane of either existence or relationship with the divine, whatever. Well, we're out of time for this particular program, but we're gonna delve into many more of the details here.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, this is gonna be awesome, and we appreciate you watching today, and hopefully this has whetted your appetite, because again, we're just getting started, and again, how do you cover 2 hours worth of material in 25 minutes? Well, you don't, but we're trying to hit some of the highlights, but as always, appreciate you watching. Again, Jesus is coming, there's no doubt, and what we're watching, as Chris mentioned, the Great Reset, the New World Order, these things are coming into play, which again, the seeds were planted certainly in our country many centuries ago, which are now, we're seeing the negative fruit, if we'll say that, of them coming to be. So appreciate you watching. As always, please pray for us. Lots going on here at the ministry, and we certainly cannot do it without our reliance on God. So we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.